Hey, what's up? And welcome to the first edition of my newest podcast called Countdown. Now, Countdown basically is going to be per week. I'm going to be reviewing something else that's a part of a countdown. So, for example, this season, I guess you could say, is going to be about my top 10 best and worst of 2019. So, every episode, I'm going to be reviewing bad and worst of that order. So this episode, I'm going to be reviewing the top 10s of the best and worst. The next episode, top 9s, and then, going so forth like that. All the way to the last episode of the season, which is going to be, I'm going to basically put it in seasons. So there's not too much on me, but I'm going to be covering that as well as some honorable mentions and dishonorable mentions and everything else. And I might throw some, other top 10s or top 5s within certain episodes. So just be looking out for that. But on this episode, I'm going to be talking about the whole list of the top 5 or the top 10 best and worst. Both lists or whatever. I'm going to run them down as quick as I can. And then I'm going to be reviewing 2 movies, the top 10s of the best and the top 10 of the worst. And then I'm going to be talking about the top 5 best films of this past January 2020. And that's really what I'm going to be covering on this episode. So without further ado, let's jump right into the best films, my best films of 2019. And starting off at number 10 is Missing Link. Now, I didn't have too many high expectations for this film, and I thought it was just going to be another throwaway kids film, but I was extremely wrong. Shit. I love the animation style, I love the story, I love the characters and their chemistry with one another, and just the whole movie was just fun and just exciting, and I really did come out of it really enjoying it. Number 9 is Joker. Now, I didn't have too many high expectations for it, but it did exceed them like just broadly. It had some surprising humor up in there, some good commentary, great acting, and just how it was crafted from just the writing and the directing and just the tone of it and just the characters. I really did enjoy it. Now, number 8 is Uncut Gems, which stars Adam Sandler, and he does get a bad rep for like the movies that he's been producing lately within the past some odd years, but this movie he did good with the frenetic pacing of it, as well as his character and just what he brought to the role and just everybody that's surrounding it and just the story and just how everything came together. It was a movie that was just that'll keep you on edge from beginning to end, and it has you rooting for the character, but at the same time against the character, just kind of conflicted. But I felt like Adam Sandler was just the shining star of this whole film, and he really just took it above what it needed to be, and I really loved that about it. And number 7 is Parasite. So Parasite is a movie that I saw kind of like earlier this year, and after seeing it, I had to shuffle around this list because this had to be on my top 10. This movie was surprisingly good. I'm not a fan of foreign language films, but this movie I absolutely love, and I recommend it to anybody because it had great humor, it had a great story to it, the characters were inviting, and it had something to offer. This is a movie that I didn't really expect to really like, even just a little bit, and just threw it over the roof for me. And I literally undeniably had to add it to this list. And number 6 is Dr. Sleep, which is a sequel to The Shining, and it is amazing. It has great visual effects, creepiness, has some scares up in it, and it has all around great acting from Ewan McGregor, Rebecca Ferguson, and Kylie Curran, who did an excellent job bringing out their respective roles. And it was a movie that you can go in and be like, this was a great sequel. It is vastly different from the original The Shining movie, but that's what I really liked about it. It gave you something to really grasp on and really enjoy. And number 5 is Last Christmas, which stars Emilia Clarke, and it is your average rom-com and average Christmas movie, but to me it does it amazing. It does have an emotional aspects to it. The acting is real good up in there, and I did like the characters and their play off of each other, and it is a movie that is definitely worth checking out. It's a movie that I really loved after the first screening of it, and I got it on digital, and I've been watching it ever since. and that's why it's on this list. I love this movie to death. And at number 4 is Queen and Slim, which is a movie that I couldn't recommend any more than what I am recommending it. It is a great film, from the acting to the directing to just the tone of it, the social commentary that it delivers, and basically just one of those movies that is saying something and does have a reason to exist. And it's a movie that definitely I cannot recommend enough to anybody that will listen. If you haven't seen it, definitely check it out. That's why I made it on this list, because it is freaking amazing. And number 3 is Ad Astra, which is a great sci-fi film starring Brad Pitt. It does have some good acting, especially from Brad Pitt. It has some great visual effects, some of just like the best visual effects that you will see in cinemas today. And if you are a person that loves space, you would definitely love this film, because it does capture that imagination of just like what it is in space, what it might look like within like some years from now, and it keeps you invested within the story and what the main character is trying to do, and I thought it was done well, and that's why it's on this list. At number 2 is Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. Now, Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark is a great film, a great Halloween film if you ask me, in my opinion, but it is a movie that is well done as far as the prosthetics, the visual effects, how they kind of blend in together, the acting up in there, as well as just the overall look and tone of it. It brings you back like a nostalgia feel, like if you like the Goosebumps books, or Are You Afraid of the Dark, and you love the shows, this really brings that to life, and it takes you back to when you was a kid and you was experiencing that type of stuff. And it is a great film. I've seen it twice in theaters, and I really truly love this film. And at number 1 is Ford v Ferrari, which shocked the hell out of me because I'm not a car person, but this movie does give me something to enjoy from just the car races and how they were shot, the acting, and just the overall story of a David versus Goliath type of thing. And I really enjoyed the hell out of this movie, and I'm glad I saw it in IMAX, which I think that should have been like the preferred way of seeing it, because it was goddamn amazing. And now that I listed off my top 10 best films of 2019, let's go ahead and jump right into the worst films of 2019. In my opinion. And starting off at number 10 is a movie that had potential, great actor from Octavia Spencer, who really did carry the film, had a great premise, but the execution of it was lacking hard. Certain things could have been done differently in the story that could have made it better, I felt, but it just didn't do it, and it just did not live up to the hype that I was expecting, as well as other people that surround me was expecting. It wasn't great. And at number 9 is Playing with Fire, which I had no expectations for in the first place. It gave just a bare minimum of like enjoyment, but not enough. Some performances were good enough for the film. Some of them weren't good enough at all. It was just more generic than anything. Nothing super original or anything creative to offer as a film. And it was a film that I could have just threw away and just whatever, which I did and completely forgot about. And at number 8 is Midway. This is a movie that could have been dope, but it wasn't. The acting was bland. It had a bad balance of characters. The CG was not good. I was taken out of the film early enough to where the rest of the film I just did not care for. It just really didn't do anything for me. And it was like, I don't know. It was, yeah. And at number 7 is Black Christmas, which was just another teen horror film. I like where they were going with the change in how the film was compared to the other films that came before it, but the execution was poor and the acting was decent, but not decent enough to save this film. Now at number 6 is After. Now this movie does not hide the fact that it does take inspiration from 50 Shades, but just does it bad. Just doesn't add anything to it. Bad acting, bad story, and there is no enjoyment to be had from this movie. And coming in at number 5 is Cold Pursuit, a film that I defended surrounding the controversy around the movie, but I cannot defend how bad this movie is. Elements of the movie made no sense to how certain actions were taken. It had no emotional aspect, and it had the potential to be better, but just wasn't, and it was very disappointing. And coming in at number 4 is The Beach Bum, which is a movie that had nothing to offer. And out of all the nothing movies that have ever been made, this has got to be one of the movies that are at the top. This had no narrative to the story. There was no story arc for the main character, and Matthew McConaughey was pretty decent in the film, but it wasn't a great film for him to really dive into. But I really did not enjoy this film. I really didn't. And at number 3 is Ugly Dolls, which is a movie, if I wasn't seeing it with my son, I probably would have walked out on. This movie had no creativeness, no laughs. The animation was pretty decent. It was generic as hell. And I literally wanted to leave the theater while it was in. I just didn't get no enjoyment out of the movie, and it had nothing really to offer me. It was just a bad movie. Now at number 2 is Doom Annihilation. Now, as a reboot that's supposed to do everything right that the Rock Doom movie didn't do, this did not really execute it well. As bad as people may have hated the first one, this movie didn't do any better. Bad CG, bad action, bad acting, writing, the prosthetics was horrible. And as far as video game movies go, this would be at the bottom of the barrel. And so that brings us to The Covenant number 1, which is a movie I despised the hell out of last year, The Final Wish. It was bad all around. Bad all around. The acting, the story, the writing, weak scares, and just a waste of time and money. It was just deplorable. Just deplorable. Like, this movie, it got under my skin of how bad it was. I paid $12 on it. That's why I stayed through the whole movie. But other than that, this had nothing to offer. It was just horrible. Horrible. Just horrible. And so, since we got all the best and worst films out of the way, let's go ahead and get into these movie reviews. Now, the first movie I'm going to review is number 10 in the best list, which is Missing Link, and I'm going to give a proper review for it. So, this movie stars Zach Galifianakis and Hugh Jackman, and it's about this hunter who is trying to hunt down Bigfoot or, the missing link and bring him back to this organization that he's a part of to prove that he is a great hunter and that this thing does exist. And along the way, they get themselves into a lot of mischief and a lot of adventure and everything else. Going into this movie, I did not think that it was going to be like it was. Like I said, I thought it was just going to be another throwaway animated film, and it really wasn't. It really wasn't. I was surprised as hell out of all the enjoyment that I got from this movie. The animation was on point. Like, it's stop motion, but it was done really well. It had a really good story. It had likable characters. Especially, I love the chemistry between Mr. Link, aka Susan. I believe that's the way he came up with calling himself. And Lionel Frost, played by Hugh Jackman. I love the chemistry between both characters. It was something that kept the movie going along. It was like one of the most enjoyable parts out of the whole film. It had great voice acting from Zach and Hugh, as well as Zoe Saldana. Her character is up in there, and her character actually adds a lot more to the story and a lot more to the chemistry because her character joins them along their travels, and she has history with Lionel, so it brings a little bit more of that charismatic personalities out to the with the characters and everything else, and makes it a little bit more enjoyable. The action was good. It is a great family film. Like, it's on Hulu right now. If you have the chance and you have, you don't have anything else to do, especially with the times and how things is right now, and you want something to watch with your kids, this is definitely a really good film to turn on and watch. It is one of the better family kid films, animated films of last year. Actually, is like my favorite film of last year as far as like animation goes and family type films. And it was just a pleasant surprise. This is a movie that I walked out smiling, and I was glad that I saw it. And I think I enjoyed this movie more than my son because this was really on point. It's definitely a hit. Definitely go check it out on Hulu. May end up watching it again sometime soon, but definitely check it out if you haven't seen it. And a lot of, and definitely like just check it out, because a lot of these movies don't really get too much love because of just the animation style that it's in. People are really just more into the animation of like Pixar, just straight digital like CG and all that stuff. And stop motion really don't get that much love. Like, definitely check out this film, and check out Kimbo and the Two Strings. Like, those two movies are freaking awesome. Just give these type of movies some love, and I guarantee you would not feel like you've wasted your time, because they're both amazing. And so the next film I'll be reviewing is number 10 on the top worst list of 2019, which is Ma. And this movie is just about some kids who get this older woman to get them some beers, and so she invites them over after getting them to her house that, they can just go crazy and have a party at. And after so many times of them doing this, they start to find out how kind of like off the rails Ma is, and she becomes a stalker type, and things kind of go downhill from there. Now, upon seeing this movie, I went in with a lot of expectations for it. It looked pretty good. It had a good premise and everything else. Octavia Spencer is a great actress. Great actress. But after seeing this film, I was like, what the hell? I put it on the top 10. It's not the worst film I've seen of last year, but it is one of the worst. Octavia Spencer, like I said, she kills it. She kills it. She sells the horror of her character as well as just the fun in the role. Like, you could tell that she was having fun in her role. And that's one thing that you like to see an actor do. Whether it's a good or bad film, you want to see that they've had fun, because it makes it a little bit more enjoyable. Whether they give just a ridiculously over-the-top performance, or they give a great performance in a bad film. Or just in a good film, they give a great performance, which adds to it being a great film. And it does give into the backstory, which gives you a little bit of sympathy toward, Ma and what she's going through. And like, you kind of get into the psyche of why she's doing what she's doing. But everything doesn't add up. Like, just how everything just kind of like falls into her lap, and then she reacts off of it. I felt like they could have done that differently. I'm not going to get into specifics about it, because that would be giving away the movie, but it just seemed like everything just came to her, and it was just like she started formulating her plan after that. And I was just like, I don't, like, it just didn't sit well, with me. I felt like they could have did it better, but they just didn't. The other actors did good up in the movie. The other kids and everything else, they did good. They wasn't the greatest, it wasn't the greatest thing about this movie. But like I said, Octavia Spencer is just the veteran amongst everybody else, besides Juliette Lewis, which does really good in her performance. But I mean, everybody else did decent, just not great. The reveal, like I said, could have been better. It does have some originality to it, and it is different from what we're seeing in theaters now. But I feel like they could have gone further with what they were doing. I felt like they kind of held back just a little bit, but I mean, I guess you could say it was okay. When it comes to just the message of the movie, which I can't really get into, because I feel like they don't really show it up in the trailer, and if you haven't seen the movie, it'll be a spoiler. But the messaging in the movie, I felt was kind of done pretty decent. What they were trying to say with like what was going on and everything else, and I don't know, but just overall, I was really disappointed just in how they handled the movie. It just really didn't give like more into what I got from the trailer or what I was expecting. And I felt disappointed. I felt let down by just going to see this movie, and just was like, I just witnessed that. It wasn't the worst out of last year, but it wasn't anywhere near the best. But this movie is definitely a miss. I mean, check it out if you want to, but it's not that great. It's not that great. So, with that said, that ends that review. So, now it is time for the top 5 best films of January 2020. Now, not that many films that really came out in the first month of this year, but There were some good ones over some bad ones. And let me start off with number 5, being the rhythm section. This is a movie, like I said, it was slow paced, didn't have too much action, but the trailer gave what was to expect from this movie, and I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the action, the acting, and just the story and the emotion that it invoked and everything about it. But don't get me wrong, it wasn't one of the best films yet so far this year, but it was good enough to make it on this list. Now at number 4, Gretel and Hansel, which was a movie that was flipped on its ear as compared to the fairy tale story Hansel and Gretel, and it was a movie that's similar to an A24 type film. It was more artsy fartsy, but it did everything right. It didn't have crazy jump scares or anything like that. It was a movie that was a slow burn, but at the same time it still had legitimate creepiness, and it had like a story that it was like picking apart, and it did it well. And great acting, performances through everybody except for like the little boy, but it was good enough to make it on this list. So taking the number 3 spot is Underwater, a movie that had the sexy Kristen Stewart up in there, and it basically preyed on my fears as far as like being underwater, out of my element, which it did the creepiness about it as far as the scares and just the great use of CG and just an overall story of about just this underground facility that's being imploded, and these people, they have to get out of there before everything goes to hell, as well as mysterious monsters hunting them down as they try to make it from one place to the next. It did it well enough to make it on this list. So at number 2 is The Gentleman, a movie that had great acting, a great story, just great action, had great editing, and just how it was done, great direction, just all around, just great. I really enjoyed it. It was a movie that was well worth my time because I used Stubbs A-List to go see it. But it was a movie well worth my time and definitely worth checking out whenever you get a chance if you have not seen it. And at number 1 is Bad Boys for Life, a movie that I had high expectations for, and they vastly exceeded it. Great performances with Martin and Will, and just their camaraderie, their connection and chemistry with the characters, as well as you could tell that they had great chemistry on set. The story worked, the villains worked, the action worked, and it was a crazy ass, good ass time in the theater, and I enjoyed myself. And so with that said, that ends this episode, the first episode of the countdown. I'd like to thank you guys for joining me. And yeah, next week I'm going to be doing like number 9s of the countdowns that I just did for this week or whatever. And I'm going to be probably throwing in some honorable or dishonorable mentions. You will find out next Sunday. That's when I'm probably going to end up dropping it. But until then, thank you guys for joining me. Check out everything else I got on my channel. We'll be dropping out, a lot more content and all that stuff. So keep your eyes out for that. And I will catch you guys next week on the next edition of the Countdown. Peace out. Hey, before you guys leave, make sure you hit that like button as well as that subscribe button. And you see that little bell? Make sure you hit that to turn on your notifications. That way you'll be notified for anything that appears on my channel. Hope to see you guys next time. Peace out.